Okay, so today 8x8 inch MDF wood panel, oil primed, and gonna start by toning the canvas. Now, it's not something that I usually do, but with this oil primed surface, I kind of like to, well, with this kind of technique of Alla Prima, I use a lot of palette knife, and I like to kind of scratch into the surface to reveal some texture and things. And I've noticed that this oil primed surface is really nice, and it kind of leaves, you kind of see the bright white surface because none of the paint gets absorbed into the surface, which is a good thing. So I thought I would give this surface a little wash back with some burnt sienna and odorless mineral spirits. Not too much, just a warm tone, because the picture, as you see, is kind of cool. And yeah, let's see how we get on. It's going to be an Alla Prima painting, finished in one go. And just want to knock back that I usually just work straight on white, but as I said, I want some of these scratchy marks later on throughout the painting to be not so white. You'll see, we'll see how we get on with this anyway. So colours today are titanium white, cadmium yellow pale, yellow ochre, bright red, quinacridone magenta, a new green, which is green terra verta, phthalo turquoise, not sure I'm going to use that yet, ultramarine blue, and burnt sienna, which I just used to tone the canvas, as you just saw. I've got a medium here as well. This is Gamblin solvent-free gel, but I'm not sure I'm going to be using that. It's there kind of in case I want to use that. Basically, I'm going to be mostly using odorless mineral spirits to just kind of thin down the paint. So I'm going to be starting up with a quick sketch of the flower. Now I usually transfer drawings, but I thought I'd give it a quick sketch, a freehand sketch, see how we get on. But I'm going to be using this here. My palette is upright, so I can't really dilute the paint too much without it kind of running down. So I'm going to use my trusty piece of oil painting paper, which is lying flat so it doesn't all kind of drip down. And I'm just going to start by creating a loose sketch really. Now I'm kind of want it to be very loose, and I'm just going to start by creating some kind of simple basic shapes really of how and where things are. This is going to be very impressionistic, abstract, I guess, but there are some elements here that I like. And just kind of keep it simple really without overworking things, and I shall stop talking and try and get this this sketch in. So obviously it's not going to be exactly the same as what we see in the reference photo, and that's totally okay. And with freehands you can kind of get away with a lot more when it comes to things like landscapes, flowers, and things like that, because nature, you know, you can kind of cheat a little bit or use a bit of artistic license to kind of not do it exactly the same, unless you're creating like a portrait or something, then kind of be careful with that. But yeah, it's just a little kind of painting sketch, and this is the second time that I've used these oil primed panels. I used it in my last week's video, the time lapse I uploaded, and now it's kind of finally set the actual oil into the surface. So I'm hoping for a nice smooth kind of cured surface. So here I want this to be, when I start painting, to be a really nice kind of sharp edge right there. I think that's pretty cool. I'm going to be playing around with edges a lot in this piece here. I always tend to play with edges, but let's fix a little bit here. Now this here will eventually be the lightest part of the flower, and I raise that up a little bit. So as long as I get that, my hard edge here, everything else should be kind of okay and fall into place, he says. Yeah, it is important to get the right, get a decent drawing, so you don't have to faff around and kind of fix things later with the actual paint. But I can see that this part here should kind of fit in, I think 2.5 times in the actual inside part of the flower. Perhaps I could do with going kind of a bit higher, so we can fix that and have that there. Not too much higher, but I can get that part here. I said that's the brightest part of the yellow flower there, and yeah, it was just I think it needed just a little bit, about a centimetre or so up. And I can fiddle around with that in a second, but I just want to kind of start painting really. And red. So what I'll do is I will come in a little bit closer, because I just want to make sure I get this part a bit more kind of dialed in. Yeah, very slick surface. Your primer's properly cured. It took a while to actually cure into the surface, but very slick, and kind of looking forward to seeing how it handles the paint and all of these kind of palette knife techniques that I like, that I just love so much. So I think we're almost time to start mixing up some colours. Just want to make sure things are kind of okay. And it's very basic at the moment, but I just step back a little bit. just kind of added a little bit more paint there just to kind of create a sharper kind of edge. So just gives me a bit more, it's a bit easier just to kind of work from when I start painting. Just some areas, like for example here, I would erase this a little bit, and I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. I mean, as I said, I can get away with kind of changing things up a bit, but I kind of like the composition of this flower. And I will make this smaller. So I know that I want this edge to be very sharp, and then this will be very blurred out. And even this kind of blurred out as well. And yeah, I mean, my angle, okay, I know that this is, oh, I want a really clean edge there. Okay, it's looking like something now that I can I'm kind of happy with. This would be red. This really decent, lush, kind of reddy pink colour inside the flower. And I think we should start mixing up some colours. Right, so a few different variations of yellow here, and obviously I'm not going to be trying to capture all of the same colour, but I want to play with some values, especially some soft edges, hard edges. That's the main goal. So if I kind of mix up a few different tones or variations of yellow and just see what happens. So I want to start with my darkest yellow and see if I can get something that looks quite similar. So I'm squinting a little bit at the reference photo, a bit of cadmium yellow and some yellow ochre to begin with. And I might even add some of that green, just a touch. And maybe a touch of that quinacridone magenta. Maybe a touch more. Now let's get some more of that yellow. I'll definitely need to be putting some of that cadmium yellow onto the palette because I didn't put enough on there. I don't want to be too stingy with my paint. And a bit of that green and maybe some white. Maybe some more white. Maybe some more white, and back to some yellow. So it does help, I mean, just mixing up a kind of general batch of colours. Definitely will be getting modified, but it just helps me kind of narrow down kind of what's going on and gives me an idea. but yeah, will be getting modified. I'll put some more yellow on there. Cadmium yellow pale. Okay, let's try and get like a kind of grey yellow. Perhaps I'll go actually no with the burnt sienna and just darken it that way. And maybe some of that quinacridone magenta. And some white. I definitely need to go a lot lighter now. And the lighter it goes, I guess the thicker the paint will eventually kind of be. So I've got some generous variations there, and I'm going to grab just almost white there. So there's a few tones and values of yellow, so pretty simple so far. There is a nice kind of grey, kind of silvery colour yellow that I like here, which I kind of did that, but I mean this colour, this kind of mustardy colour, will go slightly on the left underneath the this part here on the actual flower. But I don't know, I might try and mix something up just quickly, kind of like a grey kind of yellow, but I might not. Let's put some titanium white on first and then we'll see. But before I do that, I'm going to mix up that really nice kind of pinky red. I'm going to use a smaller palette knife here because it's only going to be a little bit. So let's see, kind of red and quinacridone magenta and bright red. So that's the darkest part. I'd probably pick up a little bit of white in that and done. And I can modify that later. Okay, so I'm just gonna dip my brush a little bit in the odorless mineral spirits, which you don't see, and I think the first thing I want to do is capture this part here. So here goes nothing. Okay, that's a pretty good tone. And okay, the surface is incredible. Feels great just from those 3 strokes. If I can just put that here, because I want a bit of precision here. And like so. Okay, I'm gonna go for this one now. Fairly large for the actual size. It's a large coma from Rosemary & Co. Gonna dip into the odorless mineral spirits and just kind of try and keep the paint fairly thin for now, and see how we go really. So usually I work dark to light, but I'm gonna work straight here. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit of that paint, just go back into the odorless mineral spirits a little bit there and just see what happens. So very thin at the moment. I'm actually for a mid-tone for now. And there's a few, I kind of want to, yeah, just noticed that a few kind of smaller details of kind of orange here, accents of orange. But I'm gonna usually work from large brushes to small brushes. And you'll see me kind of working all around the place. And I'll go a bit smaller on my brush in a second. In fact, in a second means now. Yeah. And it's just kind of keeping the paint fairly thin. So I can fix things and work over things a bit later. I tell you what, I want a bit of red in that. That's a bit too much. But I'm going to be blending that, knocking that back shortly. Clean the brush. So I start indicating a bit of a brighter tone here, keeping the paint fairly thin still. Maybe go to about here. I just want to kind of block it in fairly quickly. And what I'll do now is I will just block in slightly thicker paint for, I guess, my brightest highlight. So I'll clean the brush there and just add that there. Okay, clean the brush again, and I want a mix of these two tones here and a bit more precision. Oops. And just to add some interest here. There's a nice kind of highlight along the rim of where the flower folds over. Try and capture that a little bit. And gradually a bit thicker here. Just clean this brush. I get my paintbrush back out. And just to add a bit more white there. And a bit more white, quite a lot more white. Okay. I'm just picking up a slight bit of orange in that, where I can see in some area of the flower, which I kind of like, and just kind of blends in a little bit there. So I clean my brush and I'm gonna begin by adding some more darker kind of area where I see. Soften that out for now. I will get my finger went a bit high there, that's okay. And it could be a bit early, but I want to jump into my brightest highlight and show off that highlight there. So I got a nice bit of contrast between the brightest white there, brightest yellow there, and the darkest yellow. The darkest purple, sorry. And then I can just knock that back a little bit. Like so. And then just kind of playing really, and letting some things blend, some things not. Having fun with it. Okay, I want to mix a bit of yellow and red into that mix there with some white for this kind of sandy colour that I see underneath underneath the flower here. Probably get a bit more of that white. So a bit thicker, more kind of thicker paint there, but laying it down very loosely, lightly. I want to take that off there a little bit, and that's it. Okay, I want to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna and bright red dipped into my tubs a little bit. I want to create something, some kind of shadow now. I'm going back to my darks just to kind of indicate where a shadow could be, where it should be. So that's the thing with oils. I mean, usually I do work from dark to light, but sometimes I like to kind of step back and re-establish shadows, which you can totally do. And clean my brush again, and just begin to come a little bit kind of lighter. Perhaps there as well. Just want to blend that a little bit. And I want this yellow now. And that will blend with the background shortly once I kind of begin to add the background. Could be anytime soon. So I'm going to be adding some palette knife work to shortly, but I want to just emphasize a bit more of that shadow there. Jump into that shadow. And I still haven't quite reached my brightest highlight. That will come later with the palette knife. But I can start indicating some brighter areas. For example here, if I can mix these two together and just give me a bit more brightness. And for sure, I want a sharper edge along there, and this will be a blended edge. And I'm seeing a little bit more of a blend here, and so slightly thicker paint now. It's a beautiful surface, this oil primed panel that I made. I'm very happy with this. Okay, so I want to soften out a little bit, but I'm going to start adding in the background now because I can't really tell what's going on. It looks fairly flat at the moment. So once I add in some dark greens and things, I'll have a better idea of what's going on. So I need to just clean up a little bit there. Okay, just going to start mixing up some greens really. So I'll start with ultramarine blue and cadmium yellow, and I'll put a little bit of that quinacridone magenta in there, maybe some more. Just keeping it more natural, so I'll add in the opposite colour from this, well, this kind of red colour, quinacridone magenta, keeping it opposite to the green, which is complementary colour, just keeps it more of a natural kind of vibe. Green's a really tricky colour to get right. I want to try this one now, this phthalo turquoise, I think it's called. And some of that yellow is very punchy, look at that. So it looks very fake, very kind of a bit too much in your face. So I'm going to knock it back a little bit with that quinacridone magenta. But it's nice to have variation in your greens. So there could be a place for this underneath the leaf here. If I just add a little bit more of some of that burnt sienna, just to darken it slightly, then we can find a place for that. A bit more. It looks like a Christmas tree green. And let's go for a dark green with yellow ochre, ultramarine blue and yellow ochre, and some of that Verda green, that new green I've got. And we can grab that turquoise colour, the phthalo turquoise, and wow, very blue, very bright, but knock it back with some cad yellow. I'm going to bring some ultramarine blue in there. Totally the wrong colour. So if I can get some white in there, perhaps some of this yellow, and a lot more white, because I see a lot of cool kind of colours in this picture, which is kind of cool, but not like mint's bathroom colour. But anyway, let's add some yellow in there as well. Just toned it down a lot more, a lot. And I'll put some more white there. But yeah, it's just a case of kind of variation really. Getting some variation in the greens. It's almost there now. I guess I'd go for kind of leave it like that. And just seeing really what else can kind of go in there. I can see some kind of like beige colour, so I can pick out some burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and some titanium white, and put a bit more red in that. I don't know, perhaps there'd be a space, a home for this colour, but I guess we'll see. Let's find out. So I'll clean my brush and kind of dilute it a little bit with that odorless mineral spirits, and I guess kind of begin by mixing these two together. Yeah, I really like the darkness there. That really kind of bring the flower out, but I don't want the whole thing completely kind of dark. I do want some kind of area of light. And kind of want it a little bit playful. I want a bit more kind of variation here. Yeah, I like the complementary colour just to kind of dull it down slightly, or you can make it a little bit purple, but that quinacridone magenta is very powerful. But I like it in with this with the colours here. Keeping the paint really thin. Just grab a palette knife a little bit. Just kind of see how that reacts. There's very thick paint there. Okay, I'll leave that for now. So I want to go a bit darker in some area, ultramarine blue and burnt sienna into that mix there. And thinner paint. Maybe some of that quinacridone magenta. Maybe a little bit darker as well. Okay, I want to kind of start blending now a little bit, soften some areas, and kind of leaving some areas tight, or hard should I say. So I get my small palette knife there, and get this colour here and just begin by bringing things together really. It's a very slick surface, I like it. And making hard edges with the background too with the palette knife. and just begin by adding some juicy paint, some thick paint there. I'm going to try and combine, so I picked up a bit of green there, kind of unite the two together, so it's kind of part of the same painting, so it's not kind of separated. So a bit of green there is what I see as well in the reference photo. And I'm going to just indicate now, probably with this tone as well, is just an indication of that kind of texture flower there that's coming around, and here as well. And I need to eliminate this dark line here from the initial drawing, and almost the white kind of highlight here. Kind of breaking up that edge now, cleaning the brush and just breaking up part of that edge, and here as well. And I need to do the stem. So I can just grab that and see what happens there. Probably won't be the same colour, but it gives us something to kind of work on. I still want to go dark, so ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I just want to darken some areas at the bottom here, get some nice contrast. And here is where I'm going to sign it, so on a nice kind of area of paints where I can sign my name. Kind of like a bit of light, this kind of natural grey here, right about there. No, here as well. See that a little bit in the reference. I just want to thicken up some areas and create a bit more highlight here. And kind of refine things now. You can see a bit more refinement needed. I want to go a bit darker. Perhaps a bit more paint would help. But it's like kind of like a fine line of keeping certain brush strokes kind of like kind of showing and some I guess kind of not showing. But we can begin by adding in a little bit of details. We'll try and go a bit darker with that. I might add a touch of blue. Just to kind of cool it down a little bit. I think that's quite nice. So, yeah, it's slightly dark. I need some more titanium whites. I see this really kind of like shadow underneath. It looks kind of like this browny colour, shadow colour. So I can kind of jump back in, and perhaps that's where the yellow ochre would have been useful. So I add a bit more white just to lighten it slightly. I'm seeing a little bit of that here as well. And here. Perhaps here as well. So a few more areas of refinement. it's a palette knife. Rather than me getting out a tiny little paintbrush, I can just get a palette knife and kind of blot them together slightly. I still want to get a bright kind of highlight. Not highlight, but my brightest kind of tone somewhere around here. I need some more paint. A lot more paint. So I got my titanium white there with a touch of yellow. Oops. Okay, I quite like that actually. Accidentally kind of added some of that rose there, but it's kind of cool. And keep that. And some thicker white paint I want here. Oh, a bright highlight here I want. Kind of casting this green reflection that I see in the flower, which is really cool. And what I'll do is I'll get some green here. And just add some variation of this green. Here's what I said about the palette knife earlier. Once I start scratching in the surface, it gives me a bit more warmth rather than that kind of really cold, that cold white surface. So it works nicely now. I just soften a little bit here. Oops. And kind of add some thicker paint there. I don't like this kind of harsh light line here, so I want to just blend that back a little bit and perhaps add some more of that lighter colour. Perhaps blend it slightly more and add some of that pink if I can. Okay, I want to scrape away this a little bit and perhaps kind of define or redefine some edges now. And I kind of fix something here. So just refining some things now. Without getting too carried away, but I kind of want to go a bit darker in some areas because it's a fairly light kind of painting, the actual flower itself. So obviously with a bit more contrast it would be perhaps more, would sort of stand out more if I could go a bit darker in some areas. But I don't think I will, to be honest. I like it as it is. I like elements. I like the softness that I've made around here. I like a few things, so I'm just going to kind of keep going for a little bit longer and see if I can fix a few things. I might again come back here and blend it slightly and kind of play a little bit, but I'm enjoying this today very much, and I'm certainly not feeling like I'm overworking it just yet, so I can afford to keep going a little bit further. So that's what I'm going to do. Going to just soften a little bit out slightly. And what I could do is just pick up some yellow and just identify a little bit more of the stem. I like that. That's really nice. Even perhaps go a bit more of a stronger red there. And even my pink. Again, I'm still not happy with a bit of the shadow going on. I want to go a bit darker. So I'm going to just jump straight in with the yellow ochre and try and bring out some shadows, but perhaps make it a little bit more interesting with the connector magenta as well. It's a bit orangey. Let's add a little bit of blue, see if that will work, just to cool it down slightly. There's a bit too much there, I think. So I need to lighten it a little bit with my, yeah, that's nice. So I got this really cool kind of colour going on now, and I just want to see if I can bring it together a little bit. It's a little bit too dark. Maybe. Yeah. I'm seeing this kind of grey colour, like in the bottom part here, and it feels kind of cooler. But in some areas it's quite hard to explain. Like, for example, it's warmer here, but then it's cooler along there, along here. And that also shoots into some areas, I see here, but it's a lot lighter. Now perhaps we'll again, I want to still try and get a little bit lighter here. Oops. Okay. So a few bits of texture there for the kind of stem, the parts within, underneath. And some thicker paint. And the shadow paints under there a little bit. So now we're kind of abstracting up a few things. Kind of blending a little bit as well. I want to reveal a little bit of that warm surface as well. So a little bit more here. I can scrape a little bit of the paint away. Have it blend and soften into the part of the flower there, which I kind of like. And I want to kind of identify a sharper area there, and also kind of fix a shape here, like so. Few lines of texture. And again, I want to just cake on some really, oops, let's scratch that off a bit. Yeah, that's looking nice. And get some of that shadow in as well. That's the colour I want. That's the colour I want right now. Just for that deep shadow right there. That's so much better already. So just for those few lines I just did there, I'm actually kind of really happy with how he's turning out. I do want to pick up a little bit of red and white to make an orange, because I see it in certain parts, and I don't want to be painting all of the little details that I see, just a few kind of spots here and there. Perhaps a larger palette knife. Yeah. And just soften it a little bit there. Went a little bit too far there. My contaminated whites. I need to get some more white. I use a lot of white today, my goodness. So I will just get a little bit more white and do a few final, that's not white, that's cadmium yellow. And just a few more kind of highlights. So I can mix the white on top of that lightest tone of yellow there. I would just add a touch of yellow, because I don't want it to be bright white, to be totally white, something like that. And that would be my brightest white there. of a brightest highlight. Just a few kind of areas. Just pulling off a little bit to reveal that texture. It kind of folds over. A lot of thick paint here, but it brings the final part of the texture, the flower, to life. And I think that looks really cool. How that texture kind of comes to life, and I can do it how that kind of texture comes out, and it really kind of reveals this sort of like 3D kind of flower, and it's impasto way. And I just add a few more strokes. I want it to be a bit softer here. So just a few kind of final touch-ups. Just to soften some edges. Not everything, I want some hard edges, some kind of variation going on, and some kind of soft edges that kind of fade out into the distance there. I like that very much. That's what inspired me, I think. I really like edges, and soft edges, hard edges. There's a lot of hard edges around here and soft, and I really like that in a painting. It gives it a lot of kind of interest and makes it more like a painting, makes it more kind of, I guess, realistic, interesting. But if you can play with your edges, and it should make for an interesting painting, I believe anyway. That with different techniques with palette knives, brushes, get the combination of both going on, and you can create something kind of interesting and fun. And to be honest, I struggled a bit with this one. Some areas felt pretty difficult, but kind of happy with the result. Kind of happy with how he's turned out. And but it's the classic, I don't want to be overworking things, and you lose that kind of spontaneity, the kind of deliberate kind of brush strokes and things like that once you start overworking, and I don't want that really. I will just get my blending brush, or a clean brush, and just want to soften this area out, because that's kind of a key value area, and what I just did there is I want that to really show. And what I would do is just emphasise this strong area here. I had my eye on that for a long time, and it even comes up there without getting too fiddly. One more time. Okay. And very quickly, I hope it works, but to sign your paintings, you can get a toothpick and leave a bit of space around in case someone wants to buy it and kind of frame it. But and sign your painting like so. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got a bit of value out of that. If you have any questions, then let me know in the comments below. And if you want to check out my full playlist of tutorials, you can watch that right here. Take care for now, and I'll see you in the next video.